Even during the years of the Cold War, the intense confrontation between the Soviet Union and the United States, we always avoided any direct clash between our civilians and, most certainly, between RM. We're no longer in the Cold War. Eavesdropping on friends is unacceptable. I would prefer to abandon the terminology of the past. Superpower is something which we used during the Cold War time. Why use it now? The Cold War is over. The world has become much more complicated. Syria is already in the grips of a civil war, unfortunately enough, and Egypt is moving in that direction. We would like to see the Egyptian people avoid this fate. We should all be aware of the fact that when revolutionary, not evolutionary, changes come, things can get even worse. The intelligentsia should be aware of this. And it is the intelligentsia specifically that should keep this in mind and prevent society from radical steps and revolutions of all kinds. We've had enough of it. We've seen so many revolutions and wars. We need decades of calm and harmonious development.
Indeed, Russia and the US were allies during the two tragic conflicts of the Second and the First World Wars, which allows us to think there's something objectively bringing us together in difficult times, and I believe, it has to do with geopolitical interests and also has a moral component. It is imperative to end this hysteria, to refute the rhetoric of the Cold War and to accept the obvious fact. Russia is an independent, active participant in international affairs. Like other countries, it has its own national interests that need to be taken into account and respected. We should understand that the results of that terrible tragedy of the 20th century, namely World War II, are enshrined in corresponding international documents, and finding a way to settle all disputes without destroying the entire foundation of international law that evolved as a result of World War II is a highly delicate task. Therefore, I would like to reiterate that we cannot second-guess the course, let alone the outcome of our negotiations. Democracy is an internal subject of the developing society. There are fundamentals of democracy, and they should be understood universally in different countries. People in the eastern regions are talking about federalization, and Kiev has at long last started talking about decentralization. Order in the country can only be restored through dialogue and democratic procedures, rather than with the use of armed force, tanks and aircraft. Journalism, as concerns collecting information, differs little if at all from intelligence work. In my judgment, a journalist's job is very interesting. Democracy cannot be exported to some other place. This must be a product of internal domestic development in a society. In relations between the states, the interests of the country should be correlated with the interests of other countries, and compromise is to be found when resolving the most complex issues. Prisons where people can't even work is the worst punishment you can think of. And I don't think we should put all convicts in such facilities where people are deprived of their freedom. Russia is the biggest country in the world. It would be very difficult to surround it, and the world is changing so fast that it would basically